Okay, this video I will talk about Albert Pike, chapter 32 in Morals and Dogma, Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. He wrote a letter to Mazzini in the late 1800s after the Civil War, and he said, I believe it was 1871, he said that he wanted to bring in 3 world wars. The first war, he wanted to get at the czars and communism and create a more atheistic form of communism in the Russian area. In the Second World War, he would pit. Second World War resulted the Jews moving into Israel, and it would pit the communists against the fascists. In the Third World War, it would pit the Islamists against the Zionists, and the rest of the world would be torn on what to do. And the purpose was to screen out the revolutionaries. Now, I'll start the chapter. The occult science of the ancient magi was concealed under the shadows of the ancient mysteries. It was imperfectly revealed, or rather disfigured, by the Gnostics. It is guessed at under the obscurities that cover the pretended crimes of the Templars, and it is found enveloped in enigmas that seem impenetrable in the rites of the highest Masonry. Magism was the science of Abraham and Orpheus, of Confucius and Zoroaster. It was the dogmas of this science that were engraven on the tables of stone by Hanuk and Trismegistus. Moses purified and revealed them, for that is the meaning of the word reveal. He covered them with a new veil. When he made of the holy Kabbalah the exclusive heritage of the people of Israel and the inviolable secrets of its priests, the mysteries of Thebes and Ulysses preserved among the nations some symbols of it, already altered, and the mysterious key whereof was lost among the instruments of an ever-growing superstition. Jerusalem, the murderess of her prophets, and so often prostituted to the false gods of the Syrians and Babylonians, had at length in its turn lost the holy word, when a prophet announced to the Magi by the consecrated star of initiation came to render asunder the worn veil of the old temple, in order to give the church a new tissue of legends and symbols that still and ever conceal from the profane, and it ever preserves to the elect the same truths. It was the remembrance of this scientific and religious absolute of this doctrine that is summed up in a word of this word. In fine, alternately lost and found again, that was transmitted to the elect of all ancient initiations. It was this same remembrance, preserved or perhaps profaned in the celebrated order of the Templars, that became for all the secret associations of the Roy's Cross or the Illuminati and of the Hermetic Freemasons the reason of their strange rites, of their signs more or less conventional, and above all of their mutual devotedness and of their power. The Gnostics caused the Gnosis to be proscribed by the Christians, and the official sanctuary was closed against the high initiation. Thus the hierarchy of knowledge was compromised by the violences of usurping ignorance, and the disorders of the sanctuary are reproduced in the state for always, willingly or unwillingly. The king is sustained by the priest, and it is from the eternal sanctuary of the divine instruction that the powers of the earth, to ensure themselves durability, must receive their consecration and their force. The Hermetic science of the early Christian ages, cultivated also by Geber Altharibius, and others of the Arabs, studied by the chiefs of the Templars and embodied in certain symbols of the higher degrees of Freemasonry, may be accurately defined as the Kabbalah in active realization of the magic of works. It has 3 analogous degrees: religious, philosophical, and physical realization. It is religious realization is the durable foundation of the true empire and the true priesthood that rule in the realm of human intellect. It is philosophical realization is the establishment of absolute doctrine, known in all times as the holy doctrine, and of which Plutarch in the treatise De Isid et Osirid speaks at large but mysteriously, and of hierarchical instruction to secure the uninterpreted succession of adepts among the initiates. Its physical realization is the discovery and application in the microcosm or little world of the creative law that incessantly peoples the great universe. Measure a corner of the creation and multiply that space in proportional progression, and the entire infinite will multiply its circles filled with universes, which will pass in proportional segments between the ideal and elongating branches of your compass. Now suppose that from any point whatever of the infinite above you a hand holds another compass or square. The lines of the celestial triangle will necessarily meet those of the compass of science to form the mysterious Star of Solomon. All hypotheses scientifically probable are the last gleams of the twilight of knowledge, or its last shadows. Faith begins with where reason sinks, exhausted. Beyond the human reason is the divine reason. To our feebleness, the great absurdity, the infinite absurd, which confounds us and which we believe. For the master, the compass of faith is above the square of reason. But both rest upon the holy scriptures and combine to form the blazing star of truth. All eyes do not see alike, even the visible creation is not. For all who look upon it, of one form and one color. Our brain is a book printed within and without, and the two writings are, with all men, more or less confused. The primary tradition of the single revelation has been preserved under the name of the Kabbalah by the priesthood of Israel. The Kabbalistic doctrine, which was also the dogma of the Magi and of Hermes, is contained in the Sefer Yetzirah, the Soher, and the Talmud. According to that doctrine, the Absolute is the being in which the Word is. The Word that is the utterance and expression of being and life. Magic is that which it is. It is by itself like the mathematics, for it is the exact and absolute science of natures and laws. Let me see where I'm at. Okay, I got a little more time. This is the statue of Albert Pike, and I'm going to continue the chapter for a couple more minutes, then continue in the next one. Magic is the science of the ancient magi and the Christian religion, which has imposed silence on the lying oracles and put an end to the prestiges of the false gods. Itself reveres those magi who came from the east, guided by a star, to adore the Savior of the world in his cradle. Tradition also gives these magi the title of kings, because initiation into magism constitutes a general royalty, and because the grand art of the magi is styled by all adepts the royal art of the Holy Realm and Empire, sanctum regnum. The star which guided them is the same blazing star, the image whereof we find in all initiations. To the alchemists it is the sign of the quintessence. To the magist, the great arcanum. To the Kabbalists, the sacred pentagram. The study of this pentagram could not but lead the Magi to the knowledge of the new name, which was about to raise itself above all names, and cause all creatures capable of adoration to bend the knee. Magic unites in one and the same science whatsoever philosophy can possess, that is most certain, and religion of the infallible and the eternal. It perfectly and incontestably reconciles these two terms that at first blush seem so opposed to each other: faith and reason, science and creed, authority and liberty. It supplies the human mind with an instrument of philosophical and religious certainty, exact as the mathematics, and accounting for the infallibility of the mathematics themselves. Thus there is an absolute in the matters of the intelligence and of faith. The supreme reason has not left the gleams of the human understanding to vacillate at hazard. There is an incontestable verity that there is an infallible method of knowing this verity, and by the knowledge of it, those who accept it as a rule may give their will a sovereign power that will make them the masters of all inferior things and of all errant spirits, that is to say, will make them the arbiters and kings of the world. So in this chapter 32, he's talking about using magic and science to rise above religions and humanity and institutions of the world. He is applying Weishaupt's method, and this is about 100 years after Weishaupt. Thank you. You know what? I got a little more time. I'm going to try to read a few more paragraphs. So, we go on. Science has its nights and its dawns because it gives the intellectual world a life which has its regulated movements and its progressive phases. It is with truths as with the luminous rays, nothing of which is concealed is lost, but also nothing of what is discovered is absolutely new. God has been pleased to give to science, which is the reflection of his glory, the seal of his eternity. It is not in the books of the philosophers, but in the religious symbolism of the ancients that we must look for the footprints of science and rediscover the mysteries of knowledge. The priests of Egypt knew better than we do the laws of movement and of life. They knew how to temper or intensify action by reaction, and readily foresaw the realization of these effects, the causes of which they had determined. The columns of Seth, Enoch, Solomon, and Hercules have symbolized in the Magian traditions this universal law of the equilibrium, and the science of the equilibrium of balancing of forces had led the initiatives to that of the universal gravitation around the centers of life, heat and light. Thales and Pythagoras learned in the sanctuaries of Egypt that the earth revolved around the sun, but they did not attempt to make this generally known, because to do so it would have been necessary to reveal one of the great secrets of the temple, that double law of attraction and radiation, or of sympathy and antipathy, of fixedness and movement, which is the principle of creation and the perpetual cause of life. This truth was ridiculed by the Christian Lactantius, as it was long after sought to be proven a falsehood by persecution by papal Rome. So the philosophers reasoned with the priests, without replying to them or even smiling at their errors, wrote in those hieroglyphics that created all dogmas and all poetry the secrets of truth. So he admitted the Egyptians know better than him. That's important to note, and I'll continue this in the next video. Thank you.